And so there was a very interesting tweet here by Kenan Forbes saying that every single entity, being a person, broadcaster, production house, and those who benefited through incidental/free exposure, I'm coming for my coins. Every single contract of this past season will be audited. And my first view on it legally is that I don't think any of this is legally attainable for Kenan. And now, before I explain anything further, I think it is important for me to outline that what was happening here was in a form of a partnership. A partnership, by definition, consists of two or more people who combine their resources to form a business, and they agree to share the risks and the profits of that partnership. And so a partnership itself is not exactly like a company. To a certain degree, some people can say that it is separate from its partners, but to another degree, it is not exactly that separate from its partners because it does not have its own legal personality. And this means that it can't enter into contracts on its own and must do so by binding the individual partners. And so what happened in this situation was that this partnership between Makuducom and AKA created a show called The Bright Show, and it sort of owned this Bright Show, and it shot its first season, being season 1 of The Bright Show. But during the second season, Makuducom was acquired by Cake Media, and Cake Media sort of said that AKA doesn't own The Bright Show and that the partnership doesn't own The Bright Show as well. And so what is important to understand here is that a partner to that entire partnership actually took assets that belong to the partnership, being the intellectual property to The Bright Show, and went outside of the partnership to actually form contracts with other third parties. And now this partner actually convinced third parties that they actually have full ownership of The Bright Show. And of course, this includes signing contracts with a broadcaster like SABC and hiring a presenter like Cassper Invest. And so before I go any further explaining that, I think it is important to actually state that my assumption is that these contracts were signed outside of the partnership because Cake Media explained that the partnership doesn't own The Bright Show. According to the explanation, of course, that has been ruled out by the arbitrator to say that the partnership does own The Bright Show and AKA owns half of that partnership. But at the time, their assertion was that the partnership doesn't own The Bright Show, and therefore they went outside of the partnership to actually form this relationship with a broadcaster separately and hiring, a presenter separately. But something that is important to note is that even if they didn't do it outside of the partnership, a single partner can still bind that entire partnership only if they're acting as an agent. That means that because the partnership doesn't have its own legal personality, any partner to that partnership can sign a contract on behalf of the partnership. But that only happens if they're sanctioned as an agent, as in they were authorized and having gotten permission to act as an agent. But of course, in this situation, AKA is arguing that Makuducom/Cake Media didn't have his permission, and therefore it sort of has the same effect whether or not it was inside of the partnership or outside of the partnership. And so with that effect, any contract that they got into can be voided, meaning that AKA can cancel any contract that Makuducom/Cake Media had signed previously with a broadcaster or any presenter in this case. But it is important to note that season 2 has already been shot, as in everything has already happened. So you can't actually void contracts whose obligations have already been fulfilled. And so if Kenan Forbes in this situation kind of feels like Cassper Invest got free exposure for his brands and his shoes, he doesn't actually like that idea, and he sees it as a loss for the partnership. The only person he can go for is Makuducom/Cake Media, because the third parties in this situation, being SABC and Cassper, were bona fide, meaning that they were acting in good faith. Makuducom was the one that misrepresented their ownership of The Bright Show and acted as if they have full control and ownership of that Bright Show, and therefore they sort of lured third parties into having business relationships with them entirely. Therefore, any person in this situation that can be held liable is Makuducom/Cake Media and not any other third party. Kenan Forbes is entitled to half of all the profits that The Bright Show made in his second season. Yes, that is a fact, and he may be entitled to go for any losses that the partnership incurred, but the only entity that he can claim those losses from is Makuducom/Cake Media, unless if, which is very important, the likes of SABC and Cassper were aware of the fact that Makuducom/Cake Media doesn't own The Bright Show, which is something that AKA has been saying from the beginning, which creates a very, very weird situation here. If any of those third parties, being a broadcaster or Cassper, signed a contract with Makuducom/Cake Media, knowing the fact that they don't own The Bright Show, then they may be liable to a certain degree. But then to prove that Cassper Invest and SABC acted negligently is going to be a very big problem. Because remember, AKA actually filed in an application at the High Court to stop the SABC from broadcasting this whole season 2, because they didn't have permission from him. But a short while after, Makulcom actually convinced AKA to actually have a negotiation with them, and they told him to withdraw that application and they would actually sit down with him, and all of these things will be solved. And AKA prematurely withdrawn that application, and after withdrawing that application from the SABC, the talks didn't go his way, and of course he had to go to an arbitrator to have this whole thing arbitrated, and the outcome of course agreed with him to say that he owns half of the Braai Show. But that was after the entire season had aired. So can we say that the SABC and Cassper Invest knew that Makulcom/Cake Media didn't fully own the Braai Show? I don't think so. What can be said under these circumstances is that Makulcom/Cake Media went out of their way to actually misrepresent themselves to the broadcaster and the presenter and any production house that was involved, making it seem like they owned the Braai Show, and therefore any coin that AKA might think that he deserves, he's going to have to get from only Makulcom/Cake Media and not any other third party. But of course, that was just my first take, having read this whole tweet and analyzed it at first. Maybe my thoughts on this might change going forward, but I think that is highly unlikely. In the meantime, you guys tell me what you think about it. Comment down below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up.